Welcome, Real Estate Hustlers podcast. I'm your host, Josh Appleman. Today we are joined with Greg Smith. Greg is a Charlotte native, husband and father of two, enjoys bad golf and great deals. Former banker turned full-time broker and investor across SFR, multifamily, and storage. Greg, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today. If you could let the listeners know a little bit more about yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Josh. Yeah, I'm a Charlotte native. I've kind of bounced up and down the East Coast. Currently living in Lake Wiley. Really happy. Got a soon-to-be 7-year-old son and a little 3.5-year-old girl that's a pistol. Keeping my wife and I very busy. Just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's the best of both worlds, boy and a girl. So that keep each other busy too.
I think we're done it too.
Yeah, it's a good mix too. So tell us about real estate, how you got started, when you started, how you found your first deal, and so on.
Sure. And so I started my career back in 2008 at regional lender and had some experience with dealing with some folks that were in the SFR investment space, maybe some small apartment kind of stuff. So that's kind of where I got my experience. But dumbfoundedly, I house hacked a 3-bedroom townhome, and I didn't even know what the term meant. But in Lumberton, there's not really any sexy places to live, being in the armpit of the state. So one of my buddies moved down there, and I was like, shoot, you need a place to live? Being in my early 20s, he just moved in with me and, charged him $500 and all included. Then another guy moved down, and he came in and, to accommodate my buddy having to share his bathroom, I was like, all right, I'll cut your rent to $450. So $900 all in, covering the mortgage for 2 years is pretty sweet.
Yeah, paying down debt, covering the mortgage, and gives you a place to stay. So that works out. So that was the first taste, and then what you're still working as a banker, of course. So at what point, or I guess you tell us the story.
Yeah, so I ended up getting transferred back to Charlotte in 2011, and I bought a condo in downtown Charlotte, and I put 20% down because I thought that was the right thing to do. It's what you should do in real estate. And I ended up getting a home equity line of credit on it for like $30,000. And I've always, had kind of a excitement in my belly for real estate. So I ended up investing in a land partnership where in theory it sounds great, but it was kind of dumb in hindsight because nobody wants to lend on land and it's extremely illiquid. So I was fortunate to get out in like 2 or 3 years. It made like 10%, nothing sexy. So then the DNC came to Charlotte, Democratic National Convention, and there was an opportunity to rent my place out for a week for like $5,000. So I did that. And one of my good friends and mentors in Charlotte kind of pushed me. He was like, look, you need to buy a condo, like get into the real estate space. So I bought a condo from him and held on to it for like 12 months. Nothing crazy, but it made like 10, 15 grand. And then ended up buying a duplex from him, maybe 5 minutes down the road from where we lived. So kind of scaling up. And I had a lender at that time who was willing to go 85% on the purchase price and then 85% on the renovations. So I think all in, I had maybe 30 grand in it, and it appreciated probably 200 to 200 grand. So that was kind of a sweet hit. And then got into the fourplex space and opened up a partnership with my brother and sister. And I sat down, I was like, look, Charlotte's blowing up. We need to get in front of this light rail line going north-south. We need to get in front of the trolley line going east-west. So we picked up a single family, and we got a duplex right off the lines. And then we ended up doing a cash out refi when rates were still pretty sweet, and bought another duplex. So that's kind of how I learned about partnerships. And then, let's see, my wife came home in like 2016 and told me, hey, I want to open up a daycare with my sister. And I was kind of like, I was shrugging it off, like this isn't really going to happen. But I told her, I was like, why don't you send out some letters to these single shingle places around where we live? And not really expecting her to do it. She did. And the hit rate was fantastic, which should have been a red flag. This is a horrible business to go into. But in all seriousness, I think it could be a really good business if you can scale it up to like 200 or 300 kids. But this was not that. It was an 80-year-old house with a double wide next door. And we had no idea what we were walking into with the HR nightmares, the regulatory headaches, dealing with parents and their most precious assets being their children.
Yeah.
And at that point, my wife and I were still working full-time W-2. And our sister-in-law was kind of running the show, and she was great with kids, but just wasn't able to deal with all the headaches. I remember our 3-month-old son being in the room and his carrier, and we're firing people that are making like 13 or 14 bucks an hour. It was just incredibly stressful.
Yeah, that's the operating world of dealing with other humans, personalities, and managing those personalities and managing the business. That's more real estate on the back end. I know you do self-storage, RV, but multifamily, something that's got a lot less movement on the operations end. But as long as property does what it should do, then the operations are pretty good.
Yeah, and we've got some experience in like flipping too. I partnered up with a buddy that used to work for Ryan Homes, and so he's built like a couple hundred homes for them. And at that point though, he didn't realize that you could borrow money to go and flip homes. He was just doing it all out of cash. So I was like, look, let me introduce you to some of my lending partners in my W-2 world. And we were able to get him set up. And then on top of that, I did some loans out of self-directed IRAs to help him flip another couple houses. So that's another little piece that I got. But they're really quick-term hits, short-term hits, where you get punished on the tax return unless you're a real estate professional and can kind of offset that stuff. You're paying short-term capital gains. I think the real wealth is built in long-term ownership and value add.
Yeah, well, it's a part of it, just collecting the assets and then using the depreciation and then 1031ing out of them to get larger and larger properties for sure, defer your taxes, and then take loans on them and keep growing that way instead of profiting out and flipping, getting into transactional income for sure. I know you had mentioned creative finance too, getting into some of your deals. So touch on that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, when I first got into the self-storage space, I really didn't know anything about the asset class. So I reached out to my broker. I told him, hey, do you have any self-storages on the shelf? He's like, yeah, I've got one that's kind of around your price point that you want to spend. And then I've got this other one down in Lake Wiley, where we now live, and it was probably twice what I wanted to spend. And I never would have been able to get conventionally approved for that one. But the sellers were really willing to offer a sweetheart deal with 20% down. And then I think it was a 4, 5, 6, 7% interest only schedule for the first 4 years. So it was really a value add play. They weren't even taking credit cards. They hadn't increased their rent in probably 10 or 15 years. And then it was run very old school, not like a real business. And I'd learned a lot of lessons from the daycare. And what I'm not good at, I don't like HR. I don't like regulations. And it's an incredibly simple business. We've got about 300 doors and 100 different boat and RV spaces between the two different locations. But just getting into the creative financing side, I was able to go in and probably boost the revenues 50 or 75% before going back out to my conventional bank, who's on the smaller regional side, saying, look, Bryce, here's my numbers. This is kind of where we are. At that point, it was still a bullish lending environment. So he gave us kind of a sweetheart deal. And I'm very risk on. So I'm a huge believer in home equity lines of credit and having those available for powder on your down payments. And then you do the value add, and then you do cash out refi. And that's all for people that have W-2s on the side. Banks don't like lending to folks that don't have a W-2 for whatever reason. I've kind of been in that seat and seen it. So I'm very fortunate from the standpoint that my wife has a full-time job that the banks can kind of lean on when underwriting.
Well, I think that until you get to a certain point in your real estate game, then you get introduced to different banks, and they look at your balance sheet, they look at your assets, they see your global cash flows, and they absolutely love lending on your assets, on your real estate, on your organization, especially if it's predictable revenue such as rental income. And self storage, I mean that's got low overhead, and the margins are a little better because your operations are so much lower too. You don't have your toilets, your termites, and your tenants. You got person renting a space. 300 doors. So you mentioned 300 doors. Is that multifamily doors? Is that a mixture of duplexes, quads? What do we got?
That's just conventional roll-up doors at our two
Okay.
storage locations. And between
Got
the
it.
two of them, we've probably got 100 parking spaces. And then there's actually a 3,800 square foot warehouse that's currently be renting for dry storage. And
So
we're trying
when you bought it, what was the revenue, and then what did you take it to?
when we bought it, it was about 15 grand to 16 grand in revenues. And it's a very seasonal business. So it gets very quiet in October, November, December, and January. And then it kind of wakes up in the springtime, and you get a lot more move-ins and then move-outs. And that's kind of how the business is measured, your move-in to move-out ratio. And then the street rates are a big deal, to where how can you lure in new tenants? Because the reality is, there's a dirty little secret to self-storage, is they're going to be really nice to you in the first 2 or 3 months, but it really banks on laziness. So some of the larger REITs that you've probably heard of, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but they will be extremely savage. So they might double your rent literally after 60 days of moving in with a 30-day notice, once you've got it chock full of your junk. And they kind of count on that churn. So if you ever find a storage that's 100% occupied, it means they're not charging enough.
Got it. They're constantly pushing the barrier to make sure that they're not leaving any money on the table, and then they find out what the breaking point is by someone moving out or just not paying.
Right, and that's not how we want to run our business. The way we position ourselves in Lake Wylie, look, we're family owned and operated. I manage it myself. I live like 5 minutes away from the properties. So it's one of those things, periodically we've got to employ pricing increases, but we try to give you a 45-day notice, and it's not doubling or anything like that. Might be 15 to 20% hikes, maybe once a year, which is nominal on call the average unit $100, $150. But what's fascinating though is when you're sharing the rent roll with a bank, you might have the same unit being rented at $120 for a new tenant, and then for someone that's been there 10 years, they're paying almost $300.
Sure. Yeah, it just keeps creeping up.
Yeah.
So you bought it, it was doing around $15K a month, and then you put it up to what, 22, 23 a month, 25?
It's probably 28, 29. Okay. I mean, some months are higher. You got certain people that are like, oh, well, I want to prepay a year just to lock my rate in because, the other storage place down the street ripped me off, that kind of deal.
How do you underwrite storage when you're looking at it? Are you just comping up against other storage facilities in the area?
So I actually have a spreadsheet that I borrowed from one of my employers that I was kind of using to underwrite, particularly for self-storage. So it gives you a gross revenue portion for like small units, medium units, large units. And then it's got other income for like boats and RVs and anything that's like selling boxes. And then you can sell insurance to people, and it kind of adds up to a sum. And then there's a discount applied to make the bank feel warm and fuzzy in the event that say the revenues drop 25%. And so that's your gross income. And then you've got, property taxes are normally the highest expense. And if you've got payroll, that's normally 40 grand, 50 grand. But there's people out there that will advertise remote management. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at a facility, ideally the net profit should be 70% of the gross revenues if you're doing everything right, after taxes, insurance, repairs and maintenance. But we're not a climate controlled sexy place where you got elevators and that kind of thing. We're just a 90s era drive up. We don't have climate controlled, so there's condensation in there, but we really don't compete with the morning stars of the world.
Is that who you're wanting? Where you're wanting to get the company to, or where are you wanting to take your company?
So that's a really good question. I think at some point I want to buy another one. I would like to over the next 12 months if I could find the right deal. It's been an interesting market with cap rates, because when I got started, the capitalization rates on these were maybe like 4.5%, 5% for my kind of deal.
Oh man, it's terrible.
30-year-old ones. And now it's more like 6.5%.
Yeah, go with the interest
where
rate.
deals are actually closing at. So it's kind of a fine art. But then I think at the end of the day, I just want to continue 1031ing. But I've got young kids now, so it's kind of like, it's a lot of work. It's definitely not a passive asset class. I'd like to keep growing and get into some kind of industrial, hands-off, triple net kind of deal.
Yeah, I think that the idea of anything being passive is a fairy tale. It's just it's Mickey Mouse, because anything worth doing is going to take effort and energy. No matter how big it goes, no matter how many people you have in front of you, you still have to manage it. And if you don't, if you step away from the plate too far, then it's like anything else. It just starts to go on its own, and things just go where they would go. So economies of scale, I think, is where you find a level of freedom, but you still have to maintain and manage your assets day to day. Make sure that the team knows what they're doing. Make sure what the goals are, the quarterly, the yearly goals, targets, growth. So as far as truly passive, for an LP to find a good operator, yeah, there's passive in that, but an operator to be passive, I think that's fairy tale.
Right. And one of the things that's interesting about the asset class, I mean, it's outperformed multifamily, retail, office, any other asset class in the space.
Self-storage.
The management piece is really a lot of work, but I think the fun thing is I enjoy it. The reality is, if 75% of people are going to go with the first company that acknowledges them, first person to pick up the phone.
Well, and now are you doing anything with AI? Have you learned about AI and what you could put? I mean, you could have a bot there just answering phones.
I have not. Tell me about it.
No, I mean, that's just conversational AI. It's available right now. So it answers the phone. It'll tell, as long as you have the right knowledge base put in, and it knows about your facility, it can answer questions and schedule appointments, and really take it from phone call to a possible transaction. Or do you all have your websites where it's self-service?
Yes, we allow online bookends.
Okay.
And what I've tried to do is take out or allow people to not deal with a human if they can. So we've invested a lot into search engine optimization on Google. You can point and click, at the unit size that you want on the website. And then you can go in, you can rent your boat and RV spaces. Normally we have to, engage a little bit with the key man office spots, and then managing the warehouse is a full-time job.
Got it. That makes sense. So to get into those deals, you did creative finance. So you just had the owner agree to a note, agree to the terms, agree to the balloon. I'm sure that's in, what did you say, 5 years, I believe. And you're just making monthly payments to the previous owner for the equity down payment?
Well, on the first one, I was able to get it conventionally refied with a bank. On the second one, I was actually introduced by the owners of the original. And they're like, oh, we've got some buddies that have owned this place for 30 years. That one was much more worn down. They hadn't invested a penny in it, probably 20 years. So no lights, no cameras. I mean, I think the top parking lot was dirt. But they had all these interesting sources of revenue. There's a restaurant across the street that rents their parking lot. They've got this warehouse, which was really interesting. And there was a gymnastics studio in there at the time. And then there was a company that rents out RVs in the front of the warehouse. And then downstairs, you had 100 non-conventional spaces, and there were about 30 RV spots. So it doesn't really fit the profile of a self-storage. It's more mixed. There's probably 40% revenue coming from the commercial side.
Got it.
But that one was, it took a long time. We had to evict a lot of people. It was very unloved. I brought on a self-storage consultant, Kevin Liebrick, with My Storage Ops. Really helped us turn that one around. I couldn't have done it without him.
And now you've got firsthand experience to where now you can teach someone else how to do it based on what you've done.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's usually what it just takes action. Learn, apply, adjust. Learn, apply, adjust. Take action though first. For our listeners that are in W-2 right now, wondering how can they get into self-storage, how can they get into real estate investing, what would be some things that you wish you knew then, what you now know?
I think that what I would do if I had to rewind would be to immediately find really good mentors in that space and network with as many brokers as possible. Listen to great podcasts like AJ Osborne has Self-Storage Income. He's written a lot of good books like Self-Storage 2.0 for a post-COVID world. Bigger Pockets is a great resource, but more than anything, I would just keep a notepad in your car and kind of take the long way when you're going to work and look at these older unloved storages and try to research it online. And if they don't have a website, it's probably a good thing. Run by a mom and pop. Whereas if you see something that looks classy, they probably want a little bit too much money for it if you're a first-time buyer.
Yep, the value add is always buying the distressed asset, whether it's a distressed business, distressed property, or both, and then taking that broken or distressed property or business and fixing it, making it run right, grease up the lube, and make it into someone else.
The great thing is with those types of deals, normally banks won't finance it. So you're able to kind of negotiate, well, we could give you a conventional opportunity. It's probably half what you want though, because with my underwriting spreadsheet, it'll only allow probably half of what you're looking for. Or option B, we've got this alternative method that we can go through if you're willing to carry a note for a little while. And we can give you a little bit more money closer to what number you've got in your head. So it's a really wild thing, the seller financing piece, because you almost have to take off your rational cap and put yourself in the seller's shoes.
Well, and it could be kind of a step down earnout too, to where they're not getting taxed as high on the front end, and then over the course of 5 years, it's a lower tax bracket. Right. So it spreads out the gains. But yeah, no, it's definitely a good way to scale. It's a good way to make sure that you stay liquid instead of illiquid, because real estate sucks the juice out. And I mean, it's a slow rolling machine. So and you bring it back in, you redeploy it. So.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the income hits are lumpy, and having the W-2 really helps. I mean, I didn't like my job much the last 2 or 3 years. In fact, I mean, it wasn't making me happy. So when I went from the regional bank to the big bank, I still had the fire in the belly. And then when I cycled down, I was like, oh, it's just not getting me out of bed anymore. But the income is so sweet from the W-2. It's predictable. You know when your paychecks are coming in. But as long as you can buy a property every year, buy a duplex every year, and just scale up to where you're ready for a commercial investment.
Or take your W-2 to an operator, a company that's doing real estate, get in the mix, learn the game, and get yourself closer. A lot of W-2 people can become ultra wealthy too, just being around the right table, around the right operator. Real estate can definitely help grow other people's wealth around the organization too. So it doesn't have to just be a single member entity in order to get there. You can definitely have a team effort and grow something big. It's fun to enjoy those wins together too along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the things I've realized over the last couple of years, like there is a value to your time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And it makes sense to go out there and just kind of learn what needs to be done. But eventually you realize your time is more valuable, especially when you have children. And it takes away, you might be out there mowing the lawn when you could be out finding new deals.
That's 100% for sure. Is there anything that you would recommend a newbie wanting to get into the industry on books, possible books to read? Or I know you mentioned some podcasts, just different ways of getting in.
Yeah, there's a great book by A.J. Osborne called Self-Storage 2.0. Dig around on Bigger Pockets. They've got interesting silos for every asset class you would want, including the storage space. Some good books that are non-real estate. There's one called 10X is Easier Than 2X, which really helps you filter out the noise and do what matters, that gets you excited and doesn't feel like work. Because I think one of the things that I really appreciate about real estate, it gives you flexibility to work as hard as you want, or you can take a week or two off to go and take a vacation with your family or just be present with your kiddos.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I appreciate so much. You know, my children are only young for so long. And in a previous life, I wouldn't be able to done some of the cool things.
Awesome. Greg, we definitely appreciate your time. If somebody wants to reach out to you, learn more about yourself, your firm, possibly invest alongside of you, how can they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, very active there. So just reach out to me. Be glad to consult.
Cool. Greg, we